Are you a first-time home seller, or maybe you're not, but it's been a long time and you're curious, how much am I going to walk away with when everything is said and done? Or maybe you're a first-time home buyer and you're not sure what you have to pay for, what the seller has to pay for. If you're asking yourself these questions, you're in the right spot because there are various costs for both the buyer and the seller during a real estate transaction. And in this video, I will break them all down for you, so you're not going to want to miss this one. My name is Ryan Gillard. I'm a local realtor here in Calgary with Real Broker, and this video is all about all of the different closing costs that are associated with the real estate transaction. And if you are out there, if you're a buyer or a seller and you have some questions, you can call, text, email, or comment. I'd love to help you out. All right, let's get right into it. Point number one, preparing your home for sale. Now, all homes are different. Some are new, some are old, some are in great shape, some aren't. So I can't give you an exact number on preparing your home for sale, but think about, staging your home, decluttering it, lawn maintenance, maybe storage, junk removal, lawn maintenance. So there's all sorts of various things that might add up. And if you need some help with preparing your home for sale, I have a more detailed video specifically on this topic, which you can find right here. Point number two is photography, measurements, virtual walkthroughs like the iGuide, and brochures and stuff like that. Now, for my own listings, this is a cost that I pay for, so it's free for the seller. But I've heard of some agents charging clients, and if you're working as like a for sale by owner or with a discount company, these are costs that you'll probably have to pay for. Now, every company is different, but it's good to check around. And it's becoming quite burdensome to list properties. Like just for photos, it might cost $200 to get the measurements, maybe another $150. For brochures, it depends on how many you get and the quality, but maybe say $50 for brochures. And so it all adds up. So this is an extra cost that you might have to bear depending on the company that you choose, or if you go as like a for sale by owner. Point number three is real estate commissions. Now in Alberta, the commission isn't set. You can do whatever you want. So there's no law saying that you have to use a certain percentage, but it's very common in Calgary that you'll see 7% of the first 100,000 and 3% of the balance. That's a very common structure. And typically you're paying the buyer agent half of that. So 3.5% of the first 100,000 and 1.5% of the balance. So in the actual listing contract, there are two paragraphs. You'll see one paragraph is for the total, which is the 7 and the 3, which I just mentioned. And below that is what you're paying the buyer's agent. So again, that's the 3.5 and 1.5, which is half of the 7 and the 3. And the commission is not paid up front. So on a listing appointment, I'm not coming there and once it's all signed, I bring out like an Interact machine. It's paid out like at closing by the lawyers. So the lawyer will have like your bank balance and minus all your deductions, and they'll pay the real estate agents after the home is sold. So no upfront fees. One of the rare industries that's actually like that. So like in a bad market, like there's lots of expired listings and you could be marketing the home, you could be showing it, and if it doesn't sell, you don't get paid. So no upfront fees. And at this point, there are no costs for the buyer yet. The seller pays the commissions out for both the listing agent and the seller's agent. So in the example of using 7% of the first 100,000 and 3% of the balance, if you sold a property that was worth $400,000, the total commission would be $16,000. So how this works, it sounds like a lot, but it does get broken down quite a bit. So again, the seller is paying the commission for both the buyer's agent and the seller's agent. So of the $16K, half of that goes to the buyer's agent immediately. So now we're down to $8K per side. Now, every real estate office is different, but it might be very common that the real estate brokerage takes maybe 20 to 30% of the total commission on your half. And a lot of agents are on team structures, so maybe the team leader takes a big chunk of your commission as well. I mean, it may be up to 50%. And you factor in, this is the gross income as well, so you have to factor in taxes and all the fees associated with being a realtor, like the licensing fees are expensive. All the costs for uploading a listing, like the photos, the measurements, the iGuide. So there are lots of fees associated with real estate, and it does get broken down quite a bit. So it is a lot of money, but again, I could be in a listing appointment and the seller just assumes that I'm getting that whole $16,000, which is not true. I wish, but it's not true. And a lot of agents are not raking in that much money. There's all sorts of different costs that are involved in the business. Point number four, now this might be a bit of an indirect cost, but we've touched on commissions, and there are people out there that are like, to hell with this, I'm not paying $16,000 commission. I want to try it as a for sale by owner or a discount brokerage. Now it's a free country, you can do whatever you want, but I can tell you from my experience prospecting for sale by owners for the past 10 years, it can be problematic for many reasons, but just briefly, I could call up a for sale bidder, and before I even finish my sentence, like I could have a buyer looking to show the property. I call up and they're yelling at me immediately. So I'm in no rush to bring a buyer to a for sale bidder, and a lot of them don't want to deal with us. The problem with this is that we have all the buyers because it's free. So I would say 90% plus are working with agents because, again, it's free. So that for sale banner has lost all of the good buyers. They're left with like the bottom feeders, like the investors looking for a smoking hot deal, bargain hunters, people looking for weird financing arrangements. And statistically, they sell for 10% less on average, which is more than the standard commission at 7% of the first 100,000 and 3% of the balance. So it is a bit of an indirect cost, but this is out there. I've seen it play out over and over again, and it can be more costly to go this route than just hiring like a conventional realtor and selling it that way. Let's briefly touch on the discount brokerages. So these are companies, like actual real estate companies, that are charging very little commission. The issue is everybody wants to get paid. So if I'm bringing a buyer to these properties, I want to get paid, and I just write my commission like right into the contract. So you're not going to avoid it altogether. And we'll just leave it at that. Point number 5 is GST. So if you're watching this and you're not too familiar with Canada and you're relocating here, GST is the goods and services tax, and it's 5%. So if you're buying something for $1, there's 5 cents tax that goes to the government. And if you're buying a brand new property, GST applies, and it's incorporated into the price generally. And if you're buying a resale property, there is no GST, but there is GST on commissions. So in the example we used earlier of 7% of the first 100,000 and 3% of the balance, that commission was $16,000 on a $400,000 property, and the GST at 5% would be $800. And so the real estate agents collect this, and we send it to the government. And so that's how that works. Point number 6 is the mortgage payout penalty, and this can be a big one. So what this is if you break the terms of your mortgage, so you sell your property before the term is up and you buy something else, there can be a cost to breaking this contract. And it can be quite substantial, but it's always different because every lender has their own policies. So I can't give you an exact number on this, but it can be quite substantial. Sometimes it's only like 3 months of interest, and maybe it's like $2,000 or $3,000. But I've seen it up to like 10 or 20,000, depending on like what kind of contract they had. So it's always a good practice to check with your bank before you start this process and ask them, if I sell my property now, how much is the bank payout penalty? This is a bigger problem in like a down market or like a buyer's market. Like I can recall in 2016, like I'd ask everybody, because there wasn't much equity and there was falling prices. I'd ask how much is owing and is there a bank payout penalty? And a lot of sellers didn't even know that. And you could get yourself into trouble if you sell the property, then figure out, oh my God, there's a $10,000 bank payout penalty and there's no equity. You could get yourself into trouble. So it's always a good practice to check on this before you start the entire process. Point number 7 is the real property report, or RPR. So this is a legal document. It's a land survey. So it'll show like the house, the lot, like the lot boundaries. It'll have stuff like utility right-of-ways, easements, like overland water drainage and stuff like that. So it's very important. So in the contract, there's like a clause in there saying the seller has an obligation to give the buyer a compliant RPR, and the buyer's lawyer will actually ensure this happens as well. And so it's very important because if you're buying a property and say the garage is built 5 feet into city land, the buyer will want to know that. So it's stamped by the city saying it's compliant to verify to the buyer that everything is kind of in order. And an RPR is about $700 last I checked. Okay, point number 8. So we're moving along here. So we're at the point where we have an accepted purchase contract, and there are some costs now for both the buyer and the seller. So let's say that we're buying a condo. So typically when you're buying a condo, there's a condition, like a condo documents condition. So condo documents are like title information, condo plan. There are statements regarding like lawsuits and structural deficiencies and stuff like that. The budget, financials, insurance information, management degree, all sorts of stuff like that the seller rounds up. And that might cost, say, anywhere from like $150 to $300 to get all the condo documents. So this is a cost the seller pays, and they provide all those documents to the buyer. Now the buyer can analyze the documents themselves, but more commonly the buyer will hire a condo document specialist to go over these documents with them. Usually they're like lawyers or like accountants and stuff like that. And last I checked, the cost for a condo document specialist maybe is like $350, give or take. And that's a cost that the buyer has to pay for. Point number 9, let's talk about a home inspection. So it's good for the buyer to do their due diligence and hire an inspector, and this person will come there for 2 to 3 hours and they'll check like the structural, the plumbing, electrical, mechanical, and make sure everything is in good order and give the buyer a detailed report. So this is a cost that's just for the buyer, and it takes about 2 to 3 hours and it costs about $500, give or take. Again, the cost for the buyer, but things can arise or pop up from a home inspection that the buyer asks the seller to fix. Maybe there's like, furnace servicing or hot water like repairs and stuff like that. Maybe the roof needs some work or professional cleaning before possession. So there are things that can pop up after home inspection and the buyer asks the seller to fix them. So every transaction is different, but stuff like that can pop up. Okay, point number 10 is legal fees. So we're at the stage in the process where the buyer has removed all of their conditions and we have a firm binding offer on the property. So they've removed like home inspection, financing, condo documents. And so the next step is for both the buyer and the seller to hire their own lawyers. And legal fees in Alberta, every lawyer is different, so it's good to check around, but I would say on average it might be about $1,500. And this is the cost that both the buyer and the seller pay. They both have their own lawyers. And the lawyer's job is, they do many different things, but they're basically, in a nutshell, it's to help transfer legal ownership of the property. So they look over the purchase contract, they deal with the lenders, they talk with land titles, and they transfer legal ownership. And so other things can pop up during the legal process, like we call them adjustments or disbursements. For example, if the seller paid all the property taxes for the entire year, and they moved halfway through the year, they've paid too much in taxes, so they should get a reimbursement back. Other things like this are like condo fees. So they're on a monthly basis, and if you didn't live there the entire month, the seller should get back like a reimbursement. So it's to the day. So there are no free days during this process, and the lawyers will help adjust the condo fees based on the time that you're in the property. And also for homeowners association fees. So this is like an annual fee. It's usually a couple $100s to live in certain areas. They might have like landscaping or like lake access and stuff like that. Not a huge fee, but maybe it's like $300 a year. And if you're not there the entire year, but you pay for the whole year, you should get a reimbursement back. So there are things like this that the lawyer also takes care of. And the last one to mention here, point number 11, is home insurance. So before you can take ownership of the property, your lender and the lawyer will make sure that there is insurance in place. And I would say on average, home insurance might be like $150 to $200 per month. Again, it depends on the price of the home and what's covered and stuff like that. So it's good to shop around. But I'd say on average, for a typical property, maybe it's between $150 to $200 per month for home insurance. Well, that's my quick rundown of the costs associated with buying or selling real estate in Calgary. I'd love to help you out. If you are a seller, I can offer you a free home evaluation. Love to help you out with your own specific situation, let you know the maximum price that you should sell for, how long it should take, the commission. And if you're a buyer and you can use some help, please reach out. All of my information is in the written description below. Again, you can call, text, email, comment. You can check out my website. Love to help you out. Thanks again for watching. Have a great day.